so from now on this will be a recorded meeting. Thanks for joining us. I want to thank the City of Williston for hosting us here at their City Hall, and for all of our state and federal agencies that are attending. I do appreciate that. That being said, we've got a full agenda, and we're going to get right into our first meeting, our first agenda item. So we have Greg Viday here with us, who is going to be presenting on some updates from the U.S. Economic and Development Administration. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Greg.
Thanks, Josh. Much appreciated. Thank you to the City of Williston for hosting this meeting today. It's great to be in Levy County. So I'm going to talk about the U.S. Economic Development Administration. I'm the state rep for EDA for the state of Florida, and that's a great honor and privilege that I have. There's only one of me, and I basically do all things EDA. So we're a very streamlined organization, and I'm going to talk about what we do from an economic development perspective and how we support economic development and resiliency in the state of Florida. So next slide, please, Josh. Oh, I've got it.
Over here.
Oh.
All right, Dennis, I'm still seeing your laptop.
Second.
So you'll have to change your.
Thank you. So EDA is a small agency within the U.S. Department of Commerce, but what makes us unique in the kind of the association of federal agencies across the country is that we're the only federal agency that exclusively focuses on economic development. That's our mission, right? And I'll talk more about that in a minute. So we focus exclusively on economic development. We're a relatively small agency. Our annual appropriations are somewhere in the neighborhood of $500 million. That number fluctuates on a yearly basis. Actually, lost the. Sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. That's okay. And what people need to understand is that we're primarily a grant-making agency. So we make grants to support economic development. Next slide, please. So we have 6 regional offices across the country. We've got about closer to 300 people across the country, relatively small agency. So I'm attached to the Atlanta regional office, and that covers 8 states in the southeast, and I represent the state of Florida. I live in Florida, but I report to the Atlanta office on a periodic basis, and my colleagues are similarly spread across the states they represent. So we do that because we want our reps to be in the states. We want them to be closer to the people and closer to the economic development issues that are important to those regions. So next slide, please. So I'm not going to talk about all these programs, but suffice to say that EDA works directly with communities to build capacity for economic development, and we have a number of programs that help achieve that goal. The 2 basic programs that, if there's a pointer, if there's a laser here, I don't know if it might be, but. Oh, it's back middle. It's the middle? Okay. So the programs that most people are going to be. Might get lost in it. Yeah, it's going to be the top one, economic adjustment and public works. Those are the two main programs. We have other ones, but those are the ones where we deal with economic development grants to communities across the nation. We only work in distressed communities, so that's really important for people to understand. And that distress can be proven by things, for instance, relatively low per capita income or relatively high unemployment rates during disaster conditions, and we have another way of getting to the disaster question. But economic adjustment is our most flexible program. We can do everything from planning for economic development to technical assistance to starting revolving loan funds to support business improvement. Public works is where we build things, right? We build facilities and rehab infrastructure and build infrastructure. Next slide, please. Thanks, Dennis. Appreciate that advancement. I appreciate that. So basically what we say is we regard our grants as investments. We're making investments in those communities. Why do we say that? We say that because we believe our investments help to create the conditions where private sector jobs are created, and we leverage private sector investment in communities. Government doesn't create jobs, but we help set the conditions for those jobs to happen, right? That's basically what we say. And we work very closely with our eligible applicants to make sure that we target our investments. The investments are locally based and really meet the needs of communities where they are. Next slide, please. So here's basically who we work with. We work with states, counties, cities, other political subdivisions of the state. We work with special districts, community redevelopment agencies, the district organizations in the state of Florida. They're called the regional planning councils. Across the country, they might be called regional planning commissions or councils of governments. We work with federally recognized Indian tribes. We do a lot of work with colleges and universities, do a lot of work with the great 28 colleges here in the state of Florida, and we work with nonprofit organizations as long as they're doing bona fide economic development activities. So we don't build housing, we don't feed the poor, we don't house the homeless and things like that. We focus on economic development. So if a nonprofit is engaged in an economic development enterprise that's supported by their local government, then we can work with them. Next slide, please. So this just gives you an example of the wide range of projects that we can fund. As I mentioned, the two most widely subscribed programs that people are interested in are EDA's Public Works program, where we build things, and our Economic Adjustment Assistance programs. And the eligible public projects, now I have to say public projects, we don't build private infrastructure, right? So we build, public projects owned by the public and maintained by public entities. So on the construction side, we can do infrastructure improvements, water, sewer, wastewater, specialized facilities. We build research and development facilities. We do a lot. We built a lot of business incubators, and we are building incubators. We're building one right now in Tallahassee. It's called the North Florida Innovation Labs. It's about a 40,000 square foot wet lab incubator. That's coming out of the ground right now. That should be completed probably by the end of this year. So we're very excited about that prospect. We're building another incubator that's come out of the ground in Gainesville, run by Santa Fe College, and that's called the SEED, or the Center for Economic Development, and very excited about that incubator as well too. We do a lot of work with colleges and building workforce training facilities. We build facilities in airports to support industrial development, industrial and commercial development, and of course our legacy project are building industrial parks and helping industrial parks again create the conditions for job growth and economic development. On the non-construction side, we can do things like feasibility studies, disaster recovery strategies, target industry studies. As I mentioned, we fund revolving loan funds. There are 3 EDA-funded revolving loan funds in the state of Florida. DEO runs the largest. They have 2 EDA-funded revolving loan funds, one initially to support Hurricane Irma recovery activities, and that's a $40 million revolving loan fund. And then when Hurricane Michael hit, we helped the state put together another revolving loan fund, a $10 million loan fund, Hurricane Michael revolving loan fund, to support business recovery in the aftermath of Hurricane Michael. So we've done some interesting projects. Next slide, please. Thanks, Dennis. So it's important to kind of highlight, we're not like HUD. We don't provide allocations to communities. People have to compete for our funds. So what we mean by that is, what do we regard as a competitive project? Well, does the project align with our investment priorities? We have investment priorities. I'll talk about those in a minute. Does the project create or retain high quality jobs, right? High quality jobs generally means jobs that will pay more than the average wage in that community, right? Does the project leverage private sector investment, right? Does it demonstrate the ability to start the project, and is it feasible? Because we don't want to build a bridge to nowhere, and we don't want to build a facility that's going to be sitting vacant. We want that project to be fully realized and fully support economic development. So I'm not going to get into great detail about our investment priorities, but just seeing there, we have 7 investment priorities that projects are competitively reviewed against, which is either equity. Does the project advance equity? Does the project support recovery and resilience? And again, from an economic development standpoint, maybe the project supports workforce development. We know increasingly that workforce development and finding access to critical, appropriately skilled workforce is one of the linchpins of the economic development, and is one of the also double-edged swords, because many communities, well, many companies are looking for talent and they can't find it, and they're struggling to find it. So we know that that's a really important activity. Does the EDA project support manufacturing and support jobs in manufacturing? If it does, then that helps to make the project more competitive, for example. Maybe a community is looking at technology-based economic development. So for example, maybe they're looking to support, develop an incubator to support entrepreneurship and technology-based economic development. Is the project environmentally sustainable development? And lastly, does it support potentially exports and foreign direct investment? Now, a project doesn't need to meet each one of these 7, but it needs to meet at least one of the 7. If it can meet more than one of the 7, it's going to be generally regarded as more competitive. Next slide, please, Dennis. Oh, just go back one notch here. So let's focus on the second one here, recovery and resilience. Why am I going to do that? I'm going to do that because Florida's been hit by 2 back-to-back hurricanes, Hurricane Ian and Nicole. And so the funding that I'm going to pivot to now is disaster supplemental funding, and give you a brief overview of what we do in terms of disaster. Next slide, please, Dennis. So EDA's role in disaster assistance is part of that federal landscape. We work with FEMA, and we basically work with FEMA and our other federal partners to really help deliver economic development assistance to communities. And what we try to focus on in terms of in a disaster setting, like in the aftermath of hurricanes Ian and Nicole, is support long-term economic recovery planning, right? So a community may need to do a recovery plan or a post-disaster recovery plan, or they may have some ideas about what projects will help them get ahead after the hurricane, or they may have some resilience initiatives they want to focus on as well. So we can do all of those things. Next slide, please. So what we say is, when we have a disaster condition, we have a disaster happening in a community or a region, our watchword is look at that as an opportunity, right? Look at that as an opportunity to build more resilient infrastructure, right? Or to create better business conditions, or to support business development activities or business retention activities. Those are just some examples of things to do. Next slide, please. So economic resilience is basically the ability of a community or region to kind of bounce back, anticipate, and withstand shocks to the system. We know that there's going to be shocks to a community's economy, whether that's a natural or man-made situation. It could be the closure of a large employer. We know that it could be the decline of an industry sector. Could be changes in workforce. We talked about workforce development. Could be COVID-19. Gosh, help us. We're finally, hopefully rid of that terrible scourge. And natural disasters, right? So taking steps to become more resilient. Next slide, please. So what are some ways that communities, and what EDA looks at when we look at the concept of economic resilience? Well, a community can become more economically resilient by doing things such as enhancing business retention and expansion programs, right? Maybe they're going to diversify their economy. Maybe they know that their economy is based on 2 or 3 major sectors, and they want to advance those into, let's say, logistics, distribution, manufacturing, and other things, right? Maybe the community needs to develop a resilient infrastructure system. I've had lots and lots of conversations with communities impacted by Hurricane Ian and Nicole impacts. A lot of discussions on stormwater, a lot of discussions on flooding, a lot of discussions on roads, a lot of discussion about building back better, stronger, more resilient infrastructure systems that will not fail should we get flooding events and events, wind-driven rain events like we've experienced in the past. And maybe you need to promote more business continuity and preparedness exercises, right? To give your business community a way of becoming more resilient and taking appropriate steps before the hurricane happens or before the impact happens. Next slide, please, Dennis. So that's just a shot of Fort Myers Beach. I was down there about a month and a half ago. Devastated community, obviously, in Lee County there. A lot of damage and losses to agriculture, the fisheries industry there, business industry, residential and commercial structures, coastal infrastructure, critical infrastructure, workforce, community facilities. And this is not obviously localized to Lee County. Obviously, the map there represents that's a FEMA map that FEMA did in conjunction with our folks at EDA to kind of show the wind shear pattern across those regions, those regional planning council regions in coastal Southwest Florida and Central Florida and then Northeast Florida as well. So we know a lot of communities were disproportionately impacted by the hurricane. Next slide, please. So why do I show you this? I show you this because every community is different, right? We know that. I live in Martin County, so Martin County is very different from here, right? And it's very different from Miami-Dade County, right? So what I say to people is, you've got to really understand what does long-term economic recovery and resiliency mean in your community. It means different things in different communities, right? What matters is what matters to you all. And we as the federal government, and I'm not speaking for FEMA here because I love my FEMA colleagues, but we're never going to tell you guys what the best road that you folks need to take. And that's something that needs to be locally driven and be respectful of the needs of that community, right? So next slide, please. So I'm going to show you some sample funded projects we funded in the past, just to give you some ideas of the range of projects we can do, especially under disaster supplemental considerations. So EDA was given $500 million to deal with disasters that occurred in 2021 and 2022. So the Atlanta region, we have $160 million for our 8-state region to deal with disaster recovery, right? It's not an allocation to Florida or Mississippi or anything like that. It's across those 8 states. So whoever applies is essentially going to get a part of that $160 million, basically. So projects funded by EDA after Hurricane Irma, for example, just go ahead and we worked with the Florida disaster.biz website. They needed to update that. DEO needed to update that. And we helped them update that to, again, provide that vehicle for business continuity and support. Next slide, please. I mentioned we provided a $32 million grant to the state of Florida to capitalize their $40 million Rebuild Florida Business Loan Fund. And that's in operation today. So what happens with a loan fund is it's a perpetual thing, right? So once the needs of the impacted communities are met as far as the disaster impacts are concerned, then they can use those funds to fund general business operations, right? So initially, to be eligible, you have to show that you've been impacted by that disaster. But after the money is fully dispersed, then normal business can be funded without regard to impacts from that disaster. Because the further away you get from that disaster, then we're just talking about regular revolving loan fund operations. Next slide, please. SBDC came to us and they needed to fund a mobile assistance center, so we actually funded a mobile assistance center. And you see that MAC that essentially goes around to communities and provides a lot of on-site assistance. They've got computers, they've got a whole office set up there, and they can provide assistance. SBDC does great work. I was actually at the FEDC workshop with Greg Britton last week and had a good chance to talk to him. Next slide, please, Dennis. So I mentioned some of the ways that communities have dealt with resiliency, economic resiliency in the aftermath of disasters. This is the one I mentioned before, the one in Gainesville. If you could hit the slide again. This was a $4.8 million EDA grant that EDA provided to Santa Fe College to help build and expand the Santa Fe College Center for Innovation and Economic Development, or SEED. at the Blunt Center in downtown Gainesville. What makes this project really interesting is that not only does Santa Fe College support entrepreneurship, but they have a very strong connection to UF's Innovation Center, right? And EDA also built the Innovation Center at UF, and that's a 100,000 square foot facility. So their entrepreneurs definitely collaborate with the Innovation Center at UF, and so it's a growing entrepreneurship ecosystem there in Gainesville. So we're very excited about that project. Next slide, please. I had the opportunity in just actually about a month, February 27th, to attend the ribbon cutting. We provided a large grant to Pensacola Airport to help build a MRO. Florida, as you know, is one of the leading states for aviation and aeronautical engineering. And so this is a case where SD Engineering, which is a Singapore-based company, made a significant investment at PNS to build a MRO facility. That MRO facility is about 175,000 square feet. And I was there for the ribbon cutting, and that supports highway jobs in aviation and aerospace. SD Engineering committed to creating 400 highway jobs for that project. So, as I mentioned previously, when we do construction projects, we want to see committed jobs associated with them, right? Because that helps to generate we have to demonstrate to Congress that our programs are effective. The only way we can do that is by showing, obviously, job creation and private sector investment. We can't show that, then we don't have any yardstick to measure the effectiveness of our programs. So we're very excited about that. And that actually also supports the investment criteria that I mentioned before, which is foreign direct investment. So SD Engineering is a Singapore-based company making a major investment in the Florida Panhandle. Next slide, please. You could hit it once, Dennis. Actually, one more time. So again, going up in the Panhandle, the Port of Panama City was affected by Hurricane Irma. They have a very interesting port situation there. They ship out the wood chip pellets that are made by Enviva in Jackson County, and so their storage facility was damaged because of Hurricane Irma. So the project they came to EDA about was, can you help us develop basically a hurricane-proof biomass storage facility? And that's kind of that geodesic dome that you see in the second picture there, to really support resiliency. So it's resilient infrastructure. The Enviva company ships the pellets down to the storage facility, and they from the storage facility they're loaded onto ships, and they're sent to North England and Northern Europe, Northern European countries to fuel their houses, things like that. So an export-driven economic development project and jobs creation regarding that. Can you do one slide here? And one more time. Back in 2016, when the BP oil spill at Horizon affected the coastal communities in the Panhandle, the UF, University of West Florida, came together with Northwest Florida, the EDO there, Florida's Great Northwest, and they asked EDA to fund basically a 13-county regional economic diversification strategy. Why is that important? That document there, the Northwest Florida Forward document there, set the groundwork for further grant opportunities and help them build out some of the infrastructure that's coming online as we speak. So it kind of guided that economic development, redevelopment prospect for the Panhandle. Next slide, please. And that's my contact information. I know it says Atlanta, but I live in Florida. But that's my Florida number. That's my cell number. I'm in Martin County, so I get around as much as I can and be happy to answer any questions either now or later. And appreciate the opportunity to present to you all today. The disaster supplemental that I mentioned is live now. We are taking applications on an ongoing basis. So definitely, if you want to talk to me about a project, please give me a call. It's a very informal process. You just talk to me, and I'll tell you, are you eligible? Are you not eligible? and we have the conversation like that, and then we proceed on the basis of next steps. So happy to be here today. Thank you.
Thanks, Greg. Appreciate it. Does anybody online through the chat or the voice function have any quick questions about Greg's presentation related to EDA or the disaster supplemental funding?
Hey Josh, this is Jeff Hendry.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah. Greg, thanks for being here as always. I just had a couple of questions, well, one question in particular. With regard to local match requirements and typical percentages of matches for the majority of EDA's programs, could you just touch on that briefly?
Sure. Can you hear me? Okay. So
yes.
Yeah. Thanks, Jeff. Much appreciated. Thank you for the question. So under normal funding, EDA provides funding on a 50-50 basis. So on a $2 million project, the local match would be $1 million. We would put $1 million in from the federal share. When we have disaster supplementals like the one I'm talking about here, which is the FY23 disaster supplemental, the federal cost share increases to 80%. So an 80% cost share federal government, 20% local cost share. That local cost share can be local dollars, state dollars. The only thing we can't match federal to federal, right? So we can't use ARPA dollars. There is one exception to that, which is CDBG-DR. Obviously, the state's going to be getting CDBG-DR dollars or disaster recovery dollars from HUD. Those can be used as local match. And DEO Small Cities CDBG program also can be used as local match for EDA purposes. So, Jeff, does that answer the question?
Absolutely, and I just make one other comment, and that is that our region and individual communities have benefited greatly from EDA, and just want to highlight Greg, and when he says he's available and will answer your questions very candidly and very straightforwardly, which is somewhat unusual for a federal agency. At times he's telling the truth. He's great to work with. He just refers all of our folks on the line. So thanks, Greg. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Jeff. Appreciate that.
All right, any other questions for Greg at this time? All right, great. Anything else you can, if you didn't get his contact information, you can get a hold of me and I'll get it to you. Next up on our agenda, we're going to have a couple of presentations from the City of Williston. So as you know, the Rural Economic Development Initiative, REDI, is the 17 participating state agencies as well as our voluntary federal partners, and we want to thank all of them. And we primarily use the meetings as a way to connect with and inform our local rural communities about what's going on and the resources available to them. But the other part of that is that they come to us and they tell us what's going on the ground, and they update us so that we can better serve them and highlight both the obstacles that they're working on and the opportunities that are available to them. So that being said, we're here in the City of Williston today. Thank you again, and we're going to turn the meeting over and begin to see a variety of presentations from the city about what's going on down here, what they've been doing, what they're looking towards next, and how we can be a better partner at the state and federal level to the City of Williston. So thank you guys.
All right, with that, we're going to ask our City Council President, Ms. Deborah Jones, to lead us off with some opening remarks.
Just very briefly, I welcome you today. I am the City Council President. On behalf of the Mayor, Charles Goodman, and my fellow council members and all of our staff, we're grateful for the opportunity for our staff and our engineers to be present, to learn the lessons that you have that you can teach us. The progress we have learned and are progressing from previous issues that we have had in the past that I'm sure some of you may be aware of. We are currently pursuing our goals and opportunities and look forward to working with you. The City of Williston has a rich history, and we have pioneering spirit. We have visionaries who came to us in the past who grew our our electric distribution system. We're one of the few small cities who have that. We also have underground natural gas that gives a lot of economic growth opportunity to our community, as well as routine water, wastewater, stormwater. And we also have a general aviation airport and an industrial park that is around 2,400 acres altogether. With the growth in North Central Florida, the City of Williston recognizes the potential of being the gateway to growth and development in not only Williston, but in Levy County and the entire Nature Coast. Over the past 2 years, our staff has been dedicated to correcting the direction of our departments as needed. With much emphasis on strategic planning, our city staff has moved forward at a record pace to facilitate the needs and changes of our city to become a better provider of the essential services that our community needs. We are focusing on and listening to our community that we serve. It is our hope that today will be the next step in the evolution of our city to further achieve those goals. If you can assist our staff, please give us suggestions and share your expertise. Thank you for being here today. The City of Williston and Levy County look forward to collaborating with you and having a bright future. We hope that you enjoy your visit to Williston, and we do appreciate you being here.
Thank you, President Jones. We're going to start off by having our Laura Jones come up, and Laura's going to talk to us about the business development climate here in the city. Laura, I'll bring up your presentation.
Good morning, everybody. We're so glad you guys could come out and see the city of Williston. I know that we have a reputation for being just cows and peanuts, and that is extremely important to us, and we want to keep that history, and we want to keep our culture, but we are growing. So we want to kind of do this in a joint way where we can keep that really great history that Ms. Jones was talking about while growing and being a really beautiful town for the people who are moving in. Next. So we are on the edge of success. Our downtown is really improving with some new businesses coming in. We have a fascinating company that came in called Homestead Park, and he has everything from food to axe throwing to the RV people that come and spend the night. He has every night they have something, trivia night on Tuesdays, and they're trying to make this place a destination. And we want to make Williston a destination as well. For the past several decades, Williston has been the kind of place where you sort of go through to get somewhere else. But we have a lot to offer right here, and we would like people to stop and stay and spend a little bit of time with our local businesses. Next. So how do you define the success of a city? You can look around the towns and see if the people are happy. You can see a lot of statistics and studies that are being done. But there's a couple of things that are really important to a planner. Now, I'm the planner. You're going to hear from the utility guys in a minute. But to me, you know, commute times are important. So jobs that are local, a quality of life where you don't have to leave to get the things that you need and want. Income that you're proud of and that can sustain a family of 4 or 5. Healthcare access is extremely important. Nobody wants to drive an hour to go to a really good doctor. Upward mobility, you know, jobs where you can move on in life and you can continue and stay. Like, we're extremely blessed that we live in the city of Williston and we work here, so that we have a little bit of upward mobility, but some people don't have those options. A city's success has less to do with what trends it chases than how it works for everyday residents. So, and that's a quote from Scott Beyer. He owns and manages the Market Urbanization Report, where he's always out there trying to find trends and find out why people are happy or unhappy. So these things are really what we're looking for over the course of the next 30 years. Next. So, you know, having happiness or having success is just a cycle, right? So you just, if you have infrastructure, then you get industry, then you get jobs, then you get housing. That's it, right? No. Next. So we're going to see that that's not it at all. People have to have a lot more than just industry and good jobs. They have to have pride in their town, which Williston has in spades. You have to have good food, you have to have retail, parks, diversity, things to do, people to see. You know, it can't just be a dead place where you have a couple good jobs, and that's not what we want at all. So next. So how do we get there? Well, infrastructure upgrades are really important. We can't bring in the housing, the industry, we can't have the parks and the recreation without our infrastructure being on point, right? So it has to not only meet the demands, but it has to do it well. Nobody wants their water to be turned off. Nobody wants their sewers to back up. So that's probably is one of the most important starting points for us. Next. And we also want growth without compromise. So what we were talking about, what Ms. Jones always brings up, is that we have a very rich history. We don't want to grow and turn into, like, no offense, but like a Boca Raton, right? We want to stay Williston. We want to be Williston. And we want the private sector to bring in their houses. But we want to do it without compromising who we are and where we've been. So yeah, in and around Williston proper, about 2,000 new residents are going to be here within the next 10 years, maybe sooner. If the economy shapes up a little bit and the developers keep coming, it could be a little bit faster than 10 years. Right now we are a town of about 3,000 people, so if we had 2,000 more people get on our utility system, that's going to be a problem, right, engineers? So we need to be ready for that, and we need to plan for that. We don't want to be behind when the people are coming and asking, industry wants to be here, and we say we can't, we need 5 years to upgrade this or do this. So we want to be a little bit ahead. And we want to be sustainable. So we don't want to compromise that either. Next. So we talked about infrastructure. You can go on. Jobs. Jobs are pretty much what everybody goes to work, right? We go to work every day. We spend probably more time there than we do with some of our family, and we want to be proud of what we do. We want to make the money that we deserve, and we want to have that upward mobility I was talking about. Good jobs are important, and we have this beautiful airport where we have all this land where we can bring in some really good industry. But we also have the problem in these rural counties where our kids aren't learning welding, and they're not learning these skills that our generation was taught. So we need to be able to bring all that together and work together to make sure the next generation can have good jobs. Mechanics are really important jobs. Fast food restaurants are okay jobs, but they're usually a stepping stone to something better, like a career. Next. So our manufacturing industry, our airport is in the best place possible for more industry to come in. And it doesn't have to be something huge like an Amazon distribution center, but it can be something where...
I'll take it.
We'll take it. But something where people have good jobs, where they're using their skills, they can manage, they can move up, they can move on if they want to, and they're being taught really good skills. Next. We'll talk more about the airport a little bit later. Commercial. So the city of Williston is working really hard to support our commercial. We have an excellent community redevelopment agency. They do try to help as much as they can. We have some new businesses that have been coming in. Next. So across the street, this is what our main street used to look like. And as you can see from all the cars, it was a hub. It was where everybody went. And it doesn't look quite like this anymore. And that's okay. We can get back there, but we need support to do that. We need help. And one of the things we would need is some kind of retail to come in or some businesses to come in. Those things will give us jobs. Those things will give our residents a place to go and things to do. So I've always thought that downtown and Main Street were extremely important. Next. Oh, recreation. Excuse me, parks are one of my favorite things. I love to go to parks. I know a lot of our staff goes to parks. We have a lot of parks for the size of our town, and we have all different kinds. We have interactive parks, and then we have passive parks. We're really working hard to bring these parks back to their glory days. But that's one of the things, when you look at a survey, people are looking at housing. One of the things they do look at are the parks in town. Whether they're going to use them or not, there's a feeling that comes along with knowing that there are parks available. Next. Oh, that's it. So that is Foolish Pleasure. He was born in Williston in 1970 or 71. He won the Kentucky Derby when he was 3 years old, so that would have been 72 or 74, something around there. No, it wasn't 73. So we put up this really nice statue. It was donated by a local racehorse trainer. And that is one of the things I wanted to show you, because that is keeping our history. You know, we're talking about our history, maybe in a little bit of a new and modern way. And that's in one of our parks. So we love to see people come and stop and look at Foolish Pleasure and take pictures with him. It really brings us back to where we've been and where we're going. And I think that those types of things, those types of places where there's just a place where you can go and meet and say, hey, I'll meet you at the statue, or I'll meet you at the mural, those things are really what's going to help our city. Do you have any questions about planning in the city of Williston for the next 30 years other than infrastructure? Anybody? Yes.
Laura, right?
Yes, sir.
Laura. So, question, do you folks have an idea as to what kind of industry sectors you'd like to support in the city going forward?
Yes,
from an aspirational perspective?
What type of industry?
Yeah.
Well, we have a couple industries coming in that are sort of home builder industries where they make manufacturing. So, and we have an industrial area right downtown that used to be an air sign building, and that would be great for somebody who wanted to come in and put things together. As far as like major industry, we already have the peanuts and things like that. So, manufacturing is really where we're trying to pinpoint for the airport.
Sure. Appreciate that. Thank you.
Well, thank you, everybody. And if you have any more questions about the city, please stop me at any time.
Thank you, Laura. We're going to pivot now, and I'm going to do a brief presentation on the Williston Airport and its master plan. My name is Dennis Davis, and I am a consultant with Wright Pierce, and we support the city on most all of its engineering, except for the work out at the airport. And an airport consultant by the name of Passrow does that. But this is a brief summary of a presentation that we gave to the City Council. Passrow gave to the City Council a month or so ago. But just to give you a little insight and more in depth about the airport itself. So that the airport did develop a master plan a few years back, and the purpose of that master plan was really to inventory the existing conditions out there, identify the facility needs, and really set a future for the future of airport development, recognizing that the airport is such an important part of this community. We really wanted to have a good path forward out there so that when prospective businesses came out, you know, they understood what was out there and what the plans were moving forward. Ultimately, that master plan had received approval back in September of 2018, and it has been being implemented since then. It looked at various types of development alternatives that were needed out there. It looked at the runways, the taxiways, the overall airfield environment, the airport facilities, the business park out there, which again, Laura was talking about, very important part of the infrastructure, and then other facilities that were needed out there. They went through several alternatives looking at what could be developed and how it could be developed. And this is just a drawing, one of the figures out of there that kind of shows the future, what it would look like in the future with the various different types of hangars out there, how the runways would be developed, and whatnot. From there, we also understood that it was really important for us to think about how businesses that would develop out there would be served by water, wastewater utilities, electric, gas, stuff like that. Excuse me. And Wright Pierce worked along with Passrow to develop a water and wastewater master plan for out at the airport. So again, the city has a path forward for anybody that develops out there for both supplying water for future development and also wastewater for the future developments out there. As part of that, we came up with a cost estimate for that work, and overall, we'll see that the cost for the projects For the water system, we have about $5 million worth of needs in water system improvements, and $9 million for water system improvements, and about $5 million for wastewater improvements out at the airport and the associated industrial park. One of the things we're going to do after this meeting and kind of during our lunchtime for the folks that are here in attendance is we are going to have stations set up over there, and the staff is going to be there to answer any questions and get your thoughts on about what funding programs you may have available to, that may help to fund some of these improvements that we're going to talk about here today. So just keep that in mind for this as we move forward. That's it on the airport side of the master plan. If there's any questions on the airport, I'd be happy to field those.
Hey, good morning. Appreciate the presentations. Daryl Boudreaux with Northwest Florida Water Management District. I'm wondering if you have considered with the wastewater treatment out at the airport in the industrial area using or the treatment standard up to reuse standards so that it could be used for irrigation, fire suppression, and perhaps chiller towers for the industries that are coming in, or if you get a water user, potentially it could be a water source for a manufacturing or industrial facility. Has that gone into the planning of this?
Daryl, at this point, good question, very, very good question, and very wise one, considering that, with a lot of development, anybody that needs a lot of water, obviously, water use is a big issue. Right now, the city's wastewater treatment plant does not treat up to those reuse standards, but I think we understand what would need to happen in order to get up to those levels. So it's something that could be done if we needed to, if someone came back to us with a need for additional water. And right now, everything, the water is actually pumped out to a spray field. The effluent from the wastewater treatment plant is pumped to a spray field out on the airport industrial park property. So the water is already headed back out there. We would just need to enhance the treatment at the plant itself. So thank you. Any other questions? All right. Well, with that, we're going to continue on in our presentations here for the City of Williston. And so the next thing that we're going to have is a utilities overview by Mr. Donald Barber, who is the utility supervisor. Donald?
Good morning, everyone. And for those listening in, my name is Donald Barber. I'm the Public Works Supervisor. To my right, if you're watching on the video, you're here, is Jonathan Bishop. He's our Utilities Director. And Michael Miller, our Electric Supervisor. So hopefully throughout the day, you'll get a chance to meet with them and speak with them. Just a quick overview, because I have a presentation on the electric, gas, and the potential broadband here later on. We in the Utilities Department are simply trying to catch up from some of the mistakes of the past, some of the cost-saving measures that were put in back then that now we realize may not have been the best decision-making. And so we're just trying to launch forward and make sure that we are aggressive in how we develop the potential of what our utilities have. So our first step was to analyze what our immediate needs were, to look at some of the pipes that were, let's say some of our lead pipes from way time back. We looked at some of the studies that have been provided through funding sources, through many that are here. There's a 2013 study, as a matter of fact, that we've delved into, and that talked about throughout our sanitary system what was produced in the 50s, manufactured, put together in actually the 1940s. I believe there's a section here in the downtown, and then another section in the 50s, and then branching on out from there. So we've begun to look at CBDG and other mechanisms, looking at development in cooperation with some of the builders coming in as they come in and present their plans, working with them to upgrade, to get them some of the needs that they may have, but at the same time improving some of the current infrastructure that is there. So There we go. All right. So, we're just looking at a broad view and then taking in perspective of what we have coming down the pike. And that's why we're excited about today, is an opportunity to really look forward to saying and pinpointing what funding mechanisms can assist us, and not just bringing things up to the standard that are acceptable for the current time, but also moving forward and progressing and strategically thinking ahead of time and not waiting for those things to happen in real time and addressing them previously to that. So I'm not going to take any questions because I have another presentation here in a little bit, but we'll delve more into electric and gas and broadband more specifically after water and wastewater are covered.
All right, thank you, Donald. Well, as I mentioned, my name is Dennis Davis with Ray Pierce, and we worked with the city going back a couple of years to really identify that the city needed an infrastructure revitalization plan, is what we called it. And we recognized, if you look at current information, that overall in the United States, we need over $4.8 trillion worth of infrastructure renewal here in the United States. And in the city of Williston, when we started this program a couple of years ago, we knew that we needed at that point in time over $9.8 million worth of wastewater improvements, just in the wastewater collection system. So we knew that there was a lot of needs in the city. So we worked with the city council and staff to really set out on a path to identify what all of the needs were through a series of master plans that we called our infrastructure revitalization plan. As Donald noted, there were several reports and plans that had previously been done that we relied upon. There was a 2013 FDEP SRF facilities plan done on the wastewater system. There was a 2019 stormwater master plan and a 2020 wastewater treatment plant facilities plans. That was the beginning of the planning that we used, but then improved upon. And so what we did is on the wastewater side is we took that 2013 SRF facilities plan that focused just on the wastewater collection system, and we said, hey, we really don't need to go back and look at this, because when this master plan was, or when this facilities plan was done, unfortunately, the city didn't enact on it. They didn't do anything with it. There were maybe a handful of small projects that were done. So really, we looked at this, the system, and really just updated the cost numbers in the SRF facilities plan. As Donald mentioned, when you look at this map, there are a lot of pipes in here. I think the aqua blue are pipes that were built in pre-1946, and the purple were pre-1950s. And so there's a lot of old infrastructure that needs to be replaced. So what we did is, in the old SRF plan had $9.8 million. We updated those costs, and right now we need over $11 million worth of infrastructure upgrades just on the wastewater collection system. So those are some big needs that we're trying to figure out how to fund right now. And so moving on, one other thing, septic to sewer has been really important. We are part of the Rainbow Springs Spring Shed here. We're at the northern end of it, but still part of that. With that, because of that, we've recently done an upgrade on the wastewater treatment plant to increase the effluent, or to enhance the effluent coming out of it, so it's lower in nitrogen. But obviously, being in the BMAP, one of the other important things is septic to sewer. And so we've done an analysis here in the city. While we do have, pretty much citywide coverage on the wastewater system, there are still some areas that do not have gravity collection systems, that they're still on a lot of septics. And so with that, we developed a little bit of a septic to sewer master plan for here in the city. And as we look at that, the costs for implementing and getting rid of all of the septic systems within the city would be about $28 million. Now, those might not all be feasible when we look at a cost to benefit ratio, but we do at least understand if we want to help improve the quality of water within Rainbow Springs, we do understand now what it will cost to do that. So I think very commendable for the city to looking into that. Over on the water side, as we started our master planning efforts for the city, there was no base document to work from. And so we developed a water system model. This was the existing water distribution system. Ray Pierce performed a model of the water system. We calibrated that model and ran some various scenarios. You see a lot of green. This is a model run that we did where it shows the water pressures in the system on a peak hourly, just a regular day type of thing. And we see a lot of good green in there, which is positive. We ran another scenario, which was a fire flow, and now we start seeing these orange dots, which means if we have a fire, we don't have a lot of water being produced out of these hydrants and not a lot of pressure. So we see that we have some immediate issues today with fire flow. We played that forward. We modeled looking up to 2040, which was the end point of this master plan, and identified some needs, again, things that we needed. Ultimately, as we looked at this, we looked at needs for 2025, 2030, 2035, and 2040. And overall, we came up with about $10 million worth of needs in the water system. And that includes looking at some needs for the new FDEP or EPA lead and copper rule needs to make sure that we're addressing lead service lines. So with that, I'm going to stop right there and ask if anybody has any questions on water and sewer infrastructure needs for the city of Williston. All right, not hearing any. I'm going to bring Donald back on, and we're going to talk about electric, gas, and broadband.
So again, I'm Donald Barber, Public Works Supervisor, and I'm here to speak on and present our electric utility, our gas utility, and our foray into broadband. And in just a few minutes, let's cover briefly an introduction for y'all, if you want to go to the next slide, on our infrastructure needs and goals. As we move forward, our opportunities for growth and new services we can provide to the general public. Next slide. So one of the things we wanted to mention is that the staff recognizes that new innovation and new technology are important to pursue, not just for revenue. And our goal here is not just to come with our hand outstretched and to say, continually give us money, give us money. We want to get to a point where we can build up the utilities as a city and to be self-supportive so that we can get right what we need to get right and look forward and invest where we need to invest and eventually allow those utilities to develop themselves as we move further down the road. Next slide. So let's talk about the electric. We have some amazing opportunities, as been mentioned many times by our council president and others. We are very fortunate that we're one of the small cities that offer electric, gas, water, wastewater, stormwater, our own streets and parks. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention we have our own police department, which we're proud of, our own fire department, which we're proud of, our own airport, which we're immensely proud of. And these services that we provide for such a small town are important to us to not just for the residents that are directly within our city limits, but I'll say for our police and fire especially, they cover a lot in the county. And our county, which is also a small county, relies on them very heavily. So I wanted to give them a shout out. But for our electric, we have two manufacturing companies that we're looking at right now. We just did an expansion into our airport where we brought in power. It was a 3-year project that the city funded, and getting ready for that industrial and that manufacturing potential of that facility. We're excited about that, as the city planner Laura spoke about, because of the potential for jobs. And not jobs that people use as stepping stones, but careers, where they're going to come into town, they're going to stay in town, and they're going to live here and become part of the community. And right now, between those two facilities, we're looking at anywhere between 500 and 1,000 jobs within a 5-year period of time if we can meet the needs of those two companies. We wanted to talk about storm hardening. We're in the process of a few grants for that. The storm, we almost had a micro storm, if anybody's familiar, a week ago, and blew some roofs off. I mean, it was almost like a small tornado ripped through here. About 8 months ago, we lost our reclosure, and we had to rely on our bulk provider to utilize their reclosure. If you're familiar with power infrastructure, that's what regulates when something's on the line, or that's what prevents the line from just shutting down. It kind of does an analysis of what's going on. Pardon me. And so I also want to point out, in the midst of all of this, of looking at our infrastructure, investing in our infrastructure, and analyzing our infrastructure, that we currently have the lowest electric rates in the state. And that's kind of a parity to a place that's not far from us that obviously was even addressed in the legislative session this year. There was legislation there because of maybe mismanagement of funds. We're on the total opposite side of that. We need to build up our rate structure a little bit so that we have more resources to begin that future development. But currently, I just want to point out that we're doing all of this as the lowest rate provider in the state. Next slide. We have last year mandated development to build gas-compatible homes up to 3 appliances for all development 3 homes or higher. So council has worked in cooperation with staff in making sure that when developers come in, they utilize the resources that we have here and they diversify. We look at gas as a large part of our strategy of storm hardening because, of course, when we do have power issues that every community can have living here in the state of Florida, the gas, if we have our heaters, we have our water tanks, if we have our dryers, if we have our stove that are on that gas utility, during a disaster, those things continue. Matter of fact, in our work orders, if we would pull them up for you, you'll see that most of the new gas services that we're providing, the very first reason why they're doing it is for a backup generator. And so that's a huge advantage, because now you're not having all these folks raid the gas stations picking up those last little vestiges of gasoline or diesel, and that is a current and constant supply that we can really use. Our city hall here itself is on that natural gas and backup emergency, and this is where our staff and our team comes together during those emergencies to react to those disasters. Next slide. So about 2 years ago now, we received a grant, and it was a grant to test out the idea of a wireless internet. And we are still utilizing that grant. We actually have been good stewards of that. Our IT director back there, Aaron Mills, he's sitting back there helping us keep the meeting running, has been utilizing that technology and seeing what we could do in regards to internet, affordable internet for our community, our REDI community. We are also now in the middle of a second grant that is going to put our people out in the field taking surveys and analyzing our system, looking to see whether or not we can actually go to a hard fiber system. Now, with all these wonderful agencies here today, I think my city manager would be upset if I didn't mention something that's important to him, and that is we're a little perturbed that private companies of industry have no match on all this resource to broadband and fiber development, but we here as a municipality, with all these things that we have, willing to deliver these services to the taxpayer at a minimal cost, we have a 50% match on a lot of these programs, and it almost makes it prohibitive to get into that business. And we had a state legislator say to us, well, that's because you're not designed for that business, and I would retort that we are. As a matter of fact, we brought out this wireless program to get the billing and to get the processing and all the bugs worked out before we made that heavy investment into fiber. But here in a rural community, all the development that we speak about, the manufacturing, the jobs, the education aspect of that, it must be stated that a lot of this is contingent for companies and individuals into a community as to what you can provide in broadband. I mean, COVID taught us that a lot of us could be sent home for our jobs. And if that were to happen in our community, we would be very hard pressed to provide that bandwidth and those services that are essential for those folks to maintain their residency here and maintain their cost of living. You can go to the next slide. So we need help, and we need help to make our city a shining example of quality Florida living, to move forward, advance, while honoring, as has been stated many times, our heritage and historical community. And we need your assistance in bridging this gap. And I want to thank you for all of your time. And if you have any questions, we would be glad to answer those at this time.
Anybody from that's online can ask questions about the presentation so far as well.
This is Chris Doolin. Can you hear me?
Yeah, Chris, we can hear you.
Is the city involved in their local technology planning team concept that DEO put out a couple of years ago to engage the community in the region and the private and public sector? Are you guys involved in that, the Levy County LTPT?
I don't believe in the Levy County, but I would say that we are with the Economic Council, and we've been attending their meetings and been working with them. Terry, would you like to answer any of that?
No, I think you covered it. Economic Development Council.
There you go.
Okay. I have one more question. What grant programs have you found successful? The match issue clearly, but what grant programs have you found successful in what you guys do?
Well, the current grant program for the broadband in particular was through Connect Humanity, which I believe is a nonprofit organization. It's not it's a non-governmental agency. The one before that was Truist Bank. That was the initial funding round that we were able to receive and build the wireless network. So unfortunately, it's been private and non-governmental agencies that have been of the most assistance, because it didn't require us to put in a boatload of cash, which we were not in a position to do as a small community.
We've got, Donald, thanks for the presentation. I do have a comment. When I mentioned local match, private sector contributions to local match is fine for us. So we've had projects where there have been the Pensacola Airport project. In other words, the ST Engineering put in local match on building that MRO facility. So that's available to us. We can use that. So I just wanted to make a point about that. It's when I talk about local match, it doesn't have to be just public local match.
All right, well, we're going to continue on and get close to wrapping things up. The next presentation that we're going to quickly go over is regarding roadways. Here at the city of Williston, we have a series of roadways, like total mileage of roadways that the city maintains, operates and maintains. But we did an inventory of those roadways. Obviously, as we thought about all of this utility infrastructure that is needed, all of this buried infrastructure from wastewater, water, stormwater, gas, potentially underground fiber optic, we wanted to make sure that we were looking at it holistically. And so as we thought about replacing underground utility, we wanted to think about the roads above it. We didn't want to go pave a road and then come back and dig it back up to put in something below grade. And so we did an evaluation of all the roadways so that we understood the condition of those. And the figures that you see here, obviously red are roads that really need a lot of help. Yellow is a little bit better, green's better condition than that. Again, we went through all of these roadways and came up with an estimate here using DOT's cost index. We came up with some range of costs for different types of roadway repairs, from milling and overlay to full depth reconstruction. And then we looked at our roadways and estimated, how much it was going to cost to update all these. Overall, we have 33 miles of roadways, 2.4 miles of unpaved roadways, and unfortunately, the majority of our roadways are in a very poor condition, over 15 miles in a very poor condition. And so we've got between $15 and $25 million worth of roadway paving needs. Obviously, some of these will get taken care of when we do underground utility replacements, but it is a big need for us here in the city. Finally, as we look at putting together, I know this is going to be hard to read, but for those of you that are here in attendance, we do have this board next door. But as it became very important for us to look at this holistically, and as we finished up all of these master plans, we sat down and looked at what this CIP project would look like, prioritizing the various needs, both in water, wastewater, electric, gas, roadway, and whatnot, and came up with this overall budget. And right now, if I page down here to the bottom, you can see we've got, $6 to $7 million a year worth of infrastructure needs. The city is working closely or together to look at rate structures to see what we need to change in terms of rate structures so that we can help to pay for some of this infrastructure. But obviously, the point of today is to really let you all know, what we have been doing to plan for the future, to let you know that we're being very proactive about it, and then to ultimately to talk to you about opportunities, to help with the funding that we need. And so, as I mentioned earlier, for those of you that are here in attendance today, we'll have an opportunity to talk about that a little bit more. But I think overall, the city will be, as we move forward, looking and submitting grant applications to help fund these projects. So, really a way of letting you all know about, this type of work. So with that, I'll wrap it up, and Josh, turn it back over to you all if no one else has any questions for us.
Thanks, Dennis. I appreciate that. Anybody from the audience or our virtual attenders have any questions at this point for the city of Williston? I do appreciate your time from all the staff and members of the city that have participated. Somebody at the beginning, Lauren, I think it was, had said, talked about taking pride in your communities, and that's consistent across rural communities. People choose to live in places like Williston because it's home and it means something to them. And more and more we're seeing attitudes recognizing the need for thoughtful approaches to how the future is going to come at you, because it is going to come at you, and that doesn't mean you have to lose the things that you love and are a part of your community, but it does take a proactive approach to do that, and it's exciting to see a city like Williston starting that and having already taken action on it. The basic elements, right, for economic development, for growing your community in the way that you want it to grow, and to be what you want it to be, starts with the things that you've done and that attitude. And there's plenty of places that sit afraid of growth or development because they're scary words, and those things can mean what you decide they mean if you have an active hand in it. If you're ignoring it, it's going to happen to you rather than the way you'd like it to happen, and it's great to see the city of Williston acting on that. We will have some more presentations related to DEP here in a minute, but I do really want to thank the city of Williston. I will continue to move forward, working together as a rural community and connect you to the next step, because as leaders in the rural communities, and you are when you take steps like these, it provides learning opportunities for the next Williston, the town that's still 800, 900, 1,500 people, that is looking at being Williston size in 10 years rather than Williston plus 2,000. Just as we're moving forward with you guys, there's going to be cities just like yours that want to see what you've done and see the successes you've made. So it is exciting, and I think that's important to say as well, because a lot of the rural story we tell ourselves is that rural communities are declining and people are leaving rural communities, and it's hard for things to happen in rural communities. and there's aspects of that story that are true, but historically, rural communities have been innovators, they've been aggressive, they've been pioneers, is what we've heard before. And that's true, and it's great to see that side of the story in action here in the city of Wilson. So thanks for having us down here. I really do appreciate that. And thanks for sharing with it. That being said, we're going to move on. We have a presentation starting from the Florida Department of Environmental Protection. And that's going to be our Land and Recreation Grants presentation by Lauren Cruz. So Lauren, we're going to turn it over to you and let you share if you are ready to present.
Sure. Okay, can you see the presentation on your screen?
We can.
Okay, wonderful. Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Lauren Cruz. I work with the Land and Recreation Grant section here with the Department of Environmental Protection within the Division of State Land. Today, my presentation is going to be primarily focused on one of our state-funded grant programs, the Florida Recreation Development Assistance Program. We do have several others, but this is one of only two that are eligible to receive the REDI waivers for a reduction or a waive of match requirements. So for our presentation today, we're going to be talking about a few different things. We're going to be talking about the FERDAP program overview and purpose, applying for FERDAP funds, the REDI waiver, application process and evaluation, the project management that will be required once your application is granted funding, and several other post-completion requirements. So the FERDAP program, as we call it in office, is established pursuant to Section 375.075 Florida statute. We are authorized to establish the FERDAP program to provide grants to qualified local government entities to acquire or develop land for public outdoor recreation purposes. The Land and Recreation Grant section is home to quite a few different grant opportunities, most of which are federally funded. We have the Florida Communities Trust, which is state funded to acquire parks and open space, and as well as Stan Mayfield Working Waterfront. We have our FERDAP program, which we'll be discussing today. We also have the Land and Water Conservation Fund, which has two additional programs under its umbrella, which is the Outdoor Recreation Legacy Partnership Program and the Readiness and Recreation Initiative Grant Program, which is new as of this year, as of March of this year. And finally, we also have the Recreational Trails Program, which is also federally funded. On the screen, you can see a copy of our staff. Unfortunately, this is outdated as of a month ago. Today is one of our FCP planners, Mr. Bill Bibby. His retirement party was this morning, so he will no longer be with us. But we will be filling that position shortly, and all of our most recent contact information is available on the Land and Recreation Grant section website. The FERDAP program is governed by rules outlined in Chapter 62D-5 of the Florida Administrative Code. This rule identifies the program's intent and purpose, and it also includes the application to complete when you are applying for a project. If you're interested in applying for FERDAP funds, we ask you to download a copy of this rule, as it serves as an excellent guide to the program. It will provide you information on eligible applicants, eligible project sites, project elements that you can have, and just a plethora of great things, so it's really great to have on hand. This was my original slide, and I'm not sure if this is already distributed, so I wanted to let you know that this is actually not correct. As of about a week ago, we will now be hosting a submission cycle August 1st through the 31st of 2023. Applications must be submitted through the postal mail to the address on your screen. This address will also be on the application form itself. Applications must be in office by close of business or 5:00 p.m. on Thursday, August 31st. Incomplete applications will not be considered, and there is no deficiency response period for these applications. Interested parties are directed to submit one original copy of their application in a soft cover binder. So who can apply for FERDAP funding? Eligible applicants include counties, municipalities, and independent special districts with a legal responsibility for providing outdoor recreation sites and facilities for the use and benefit of the general public. There are 3 types of eligible projects under the FERDAP program. One is the acquisition of land for public outdoor recreation purposes. The second is the development and or renovation of land for public outdoor recreation purposes. And the third is the construction of public recreational trails. If you apply for an acquisition project and you are granted funding, applicants must develop the acquired site for public outdoor recreation use within 3 calendar years. So now I'm going to provide you with a few examples of some projects for each of these categories. The first of which is an acquisition project. The town of Cross City acquired the Thompson Square property in 2007 through the use of FERDAP acquisition funding. The city was awarded $200,000 with a $0 match because they submitted and were approved their REDI waiver. Terms of the acquisition included development requirements such as a playground, landscaping, picnic area, and an amphitheater. Next, we will discuss the City of Niceville's Turkey Creek Park. This is a facility development project that was applied for. They were awarded just over $100,000, $108,750 in FERDAP funding for the development of a fishing platform, observation platform, an ADA compliant canoe and kayak launch, an elevated walkway, picnic facilities, and parking lot improvements. The city was required to meet a 25% match at a cost of $36,250. What's interesting about this facility is that it not only used the FERDAP funding to develop the site, but it was also acquired through Florida Communities Trust funding in 2014. And finally, we have a trail development project. This is a bit more local to our northern headquarters. The city of Leon County received a $90,000 FERDAP grant award for the trail development known as the Miccosukee Trailhead. The county was required to meet a 50% match at a cost of $90,000. Facilities that were developed include a bike trail, restrooms, renovation of existing parking facilities, additional support facilities such as bike racks and water fountains, and it also included an automatic horse waterer and a mister for runners. Applications that are declared ineligible by the department will not be reviewed for, well, they will be reviewed, but they will not be eligible to move forward for competition for funding that year. The department may determine that a project site or facility is not viable or practical. That would occur if the application does not demonstrate appropriate site control, or if the site has documented and unresolved environmental violations. Project site or facility would also not be considered if it is on school board property. It has to be public property, it cannot be private property, and it cannot be owned by the local school board. And then any application scoring under 53 points would also not be eligible to compete for funding. Some other criteria that we often see that makes applications ineligible are insufficient site control documentation. Our website does have a list of tips and tricks to ensure that you submit sufficient items. Some of our more common issues are that the documents are historic documents that aren't legible, or the legal description within a plat does not match that of the deed to the property. It just sort of varies for different reasons why the site control would not be sufficient. Additionally, there cannot be any duplicate or overlapping projects. If you already have an active and ongoing project at the site with any of the Land and Recreation Grant section funding, we cannot award any additional funds until the original project is finished, because we have noted that there is an issue with commingling of funds, especially when you are developing a park and we understand that from a local perspective, you have an overall park plan and an overall park plan. However, we have found that when local governments apply for multiple grants at the same time, it's very difficult for local staff as well as department staff to ensure that no commingling occurs, because a lot of them are bid out together, and it becomes very complicated, so we're no longer allowing any duplicate or overlapping projects. So what is the maximum grant award? The maximum grant award an applicant may apply for is $200,000. Your grant match ratio is based on your grant request. So on this slide, you will see the different ratios of match a grantee would be responsible for. And for additional information, you can refer to our administrative rule, which is, again, is the 62D-5. It is very helpful for understanding all sorts of items. And additionally, our match sources for the FERDAP program are cash, land value, and in-kind services. For land value, it has to be the value of undeveloped land owned by the applicant, and that is subject to conditions which are included in our guiding rule. Is a waiver or reduction of match available? Yes, it is available. An economically distressed community is eligible to request a waiver of reduction or reduction of match for the grant requirements. If you are an eligible rural area of opportunity, you can submit a request for a match waiver. You can determine if you are a candidate for these REDI waivers by visiting DEO's website. How can I apply for FERDAP funding? So applicants must submit a completed FERDAP grant application during an announced submission cycle. We host one application cycle per year, typically depending on funding available by the legislature. Applicants may submit up to 2 applications during the submission period. Each agency may have only a total of 3 active projects, including any applications being submitted. Applicants must involve only 1 project site except for acquisition or development of saltwater beach access. So if you currently have an awarded project for 1 park, you can apply for up to 2 other parks, but again, they cannot be on the same site, and you can only submit 2 applications during the application period. This is the other portion of my presentation that has been updated. We no longer will, for this year, will host the application cycle through our online portal. Our portal is going through some severe updates that will not be finalized before the August 1 date. So we will be going back to paper submissions. Again, that will be August 1st through August 31st of 2023. They will be mailed to our headquarters here in Tallahassee at the address on your screen. They must be in office by 5 p.m. on August 31st. Incomplete applications will not be considered. A copy of the application is available on our website as well. So let's talk about the evaluation process. All of the applications are reviewed, ranked, and scored to determine if they're eligible to compete for funding. A yearly priority list is established comprised of ranked scores for each category. Applications will be ranked on the priority list according to assigned points. The application with the highest score will receive the highest rank. The remaining applications will be arranged in descending order. They will be assigned by their earned points. If 2 or more applications receive the same score, a tiebreaker system will be used to decide the priority ranking among them. Applications with equal scores will be assigned in order of priority based on the amount of funds previously received by the applicant through FERDAP during the previous 5 fiscal years. The application from an applicant who received the lowest amount of funding over the last 5 years will receive the highest priority. The remaining tied applications will be arranged in descending order, related inversely to the amount of program funds they received. As the recommended priority list is finalized, the department secretary executes the document. It's reviewed, revised as necessary, and executed through their signature. After the approval by the secretary, the list is presented to DEP budget for routing for legislative review. Once the legislator has assigned funding, we will notify sponsors of their award. Notifications usually occur after July 1st. Now let's talk about project management once you've received an award. Applicants awarded funding will enter into a standard grant agreement with the department for the completion of their approved project. Project agreements contain terms and conditions particular to each project and are non-transferable. As the agreement is executed, grantees will have 180 calendar days to complete all associated tasks with project commencement, which includes planning, design, permitting, surveying, publication of invitations for contractual services, and securing a subcontractor for the project. Triennial status reports are due 3 times a year on January 5th, May 5th, and September 5th, and these terms are outlined in the grant agreement. Project completion must be finalized 60 days prior to the expiration date of the agreement. Acquisition grantees will have up to 1 year from the start of the state's fiscal year in which funds are appropriated to purchase the property. Department staff may extend this period for good cause such as financial hardship, public controversy, or factors beyond the grantee's control, such as hurricanes, at the written request of the grantees. We must receive these requests in writing and execute a formal amendment to the agreement. Extensions to projects cannot be verbal and must be documented by both parties. Extensions shall not exceed 3 years from the start of the state's fiscal year in which funds were appropriated. Development grantees will have up to 3 years from the start of the state's fiscal year in which funds are appropriated to complete the construction of their project. If the project is not completed within 3 years from the original contract date, the start of the state's fiscal year in which the funds are appropriated, the contract shall be terminated and the project funds will be reverted to the revenue fund from which they were appropriated originally. There are several post-completion processes once your project has been awarded, constructed, and reimbursed. The first of which is site dedication. So this will depend on the land ownership. Land owned by the grantee, which is developed or acquired with FERDAP funds, is to be dedicated in perpetuity as an outdoor recreation site for the use and benefit of the general public. Land under control by ownership of the grantee by lease will be dedicated as an outdoor recreation area for the use and benefit of the general public for a minimum of 25 years from the completion date of the project. The dedications must be recorded in the public property records by the grantee. The limitation of use form is available on our website, and this must be filed with the either the acquisition documents or the final site plan that will be completed once the project has finalized construction. An additional requirement is the management of the project site. Grantees must ensure that the sites and facilities are protected that have been developed with FERDAP funds. They have to be operated and maintained for outdoor recreational purposes for a minimum period of 25 years from the completion date in the project agreement. All project sites must be open at reasonable times and shall be managed in a safe and attractive manner. They're not required to be open 24 hours a day, but you must have posted signage that states the hours of operation for the park. An additional portion of this is public access. All facilities must be accessible to the public on a non-exclusive basis without regard for age, sex, race, religion, ability. Additional requirements are entrance fees. You may charge an entrance fee to a park, however, it must be reasonable, and it must be maintained for the general public and not on the basis of residents. Fees can only be charged if the grantee can clearly show that the difference in the entrance fees reflects all economic factors related to park management, and it's not simply related to the amount of tax dollars spent by the residents for the park, and that a definite burden on the grantee and park maintenance costs clearly justifies a higher fee for non-residents. The third project site management requirement is native planting. In developing a project area with program funds, a grantee shall primarily use vegetation native to the area, except for lawn grasses. There will be post-completion inspections completed by the department, and the department staff retains the right to perform on-site inspection of completed program sites to ensure compliance with program requirements as stated in subsections 1, 2, and 3. So what happens in the instance of non-compliance? The department shall terminate a project agreement and demand return of the program funds, including interest for non-compliance by a grantee with the terms stated in the project agreement or the program rule. If grantees fail to comply with the provisions of this part of the project agreement, the department shall declare the grantee ineligible for further participation in the FERDAP program until such time as compliance has been obtained. Conversions. Conversions are permitted with the FERDAP program. However, should a grantee decide to complete a conversion in the dedication period of the project site, so perpetuity for land owned by the project applicant or 25 years for the land lease, you must replace the area, facilities, resources, or the site in its entirety at the applicant's own expense with a project of comparable scope and quality. So if you'd like to do a conversion of a playground, it would have to be replaced with a playground of equal size and quality, or parking or beach access. Anything that is purchased using FERDAP funds will be required to have a comparable replacement. So for our contact information, we have had a few staff changes over the last month, and we will actually have some more staff changes in the next month as we have a few people retiring and a few new team members coming into the program. Our main phone line is listed here on this slide. It will send it to our staff assistant, and Ms. April Moody is our current FERDAP community assistant consultant. We will have a new consultant coming in on June 1st, but April will be able to provide you with any questions you have until that time. Our program manager is Ms. Linda Reeves. She's available at the email address listed on the slide. And then our legal counsel for the program is Patricia Henry. We recommend that if you have any questions about your site control documentation, if it's deficient, if there's questions on the title, things like that, that you contact Patricia and ask her to do a cursory review, and she can let you know if there is anything else that you should include in your application. That concludes my slides for today, and I'm going to go ahead and exit out of my presentation and turn it back over to you, Josh.
Thanks, Lauren. Appreciate it. Does anybody have any questions related to the presentation? All right. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Chris, I see you again. Go ahead.
Lauren, the legislature this year appropriated $11.2 million for. They also included $22.8 million for projects. Now, are these projects just direct local projects, and what's the department's view of these projects? Do you give any indication to the governor's office that these were outside of the program, or do you acknowledge that these are meritorious projects, or because it was a pretty significant amount? And the second part is, was the $11.2 million, did that cover the priority lists that you submitted to the legislature?
I believe that the FERDAP list has been funded in full. That I actually work with the federal programs. I am not personally the coordinator for the FERDAP program itself. But if you would like my email address to be forwarded to you and you can send me that question, I can provide you with follow-up. I do believe the entire list was funded, but I would have to refer to our program manager for that exact information. And I do know that as far as the legislative line items are concerned, we reviewed them before they're appropriated. There were several that we believe were more appropriate to fit some of the water grant funding, some of the stormwater projects and things like that, because none of the land and recreation grants include the provision for stormwater in our federal code or our state statute or anything like that. But again, that's really up to the department to determine where those go as far as the program.
One last question. There was also $2.6 million appropriated for the National Recreation Trails in the, were those for projects that were submitted, or is that a competitive program you guys will administer during the year?
Correct, so that is for our federal recreational trails program. We just actually finished our application cycle. That is posted February 1st to March 1st of every calendar year. We have reviewed and scored and ranked those projects, and we have a committee for the recreational trails program who reviews the projects and proposes the priority list to the Secretary of DEP and to the Federal Highway Administration. Our public meeting will be June 6th in Inverness, and so we'll be establishing where that funding is going to be going on that date. A recommendation, I should say.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lauren. Anybody else? Questions for Lauren?
Thank you all. Y'all have a great day.
Thanks, Lauren. All right, next up is going to be Michael Barr, another representative from the Florida Department of Environmental Protection, and he will be talking about the springs and water quality grants. Michael, when you're ready.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'd like to first thank City of Williston and DEO for hosting. I greatly appreciate the opportunity to speak with you all today. So I'll get right into it. I'm Michael Barr. I'm the program administrator for the Springs and Watershed Restoration Program in the Division of Water Restoration Assistance here at DEP. And I'll be talking about some of our grant funding opportunities. I'll start with my program, the Springs Grant. It's a annual state appropriation. We're getting $50 million this year. It was 75 last year, but it's typically 50. It's for land acquisition and capital projects that improve water quality or quantity in springs. Eligible projects include Ag BMP, cost share projects, wastewater, water conservation, hydrologic restoration, stormwater, and then other types of water quality or water quality projects. So the process for that grant. Projects will first be submitted to the water management district that you're located in. Each one has a different solicitation time frame, but it's typically late fall or early winter. Those projects are evaluated by the water management district first and by their governing board at a public meeting, and then sent to DEP in May. Actually, today was the due date for those, so we're getting those in now. We'll begin our evaluation process. We will consolidate that list and post it for public comment soon. That's the next step. DEP will review and make our recommendations, and that'll go to the governor's office. Those are some of the factors considered in evaluating projects: the nutrient savings, water savings, the cost share, readiness to proceed, whether it's located in a BMAP, and then if it has an MFL. And then there will be an announcement in the fall or winter. Usually it's September to December. Last year it was December, which is a little bit late for what we typically expect, but that's the time frame for what we expect. Next, I'll talk about another grant. This is going to be something new this year. The Water Quality Improvement Grant. That's going to be established under Florida Statute 403.0673, which was the wastewater grant the past couple of years. So that'll be a change to that statute, that grant program. And it's going to be expanding the area and what's eligible beyond wastewater and beyond. Is going to be any waters that are not attaining nutrient standards or in TMDL areas or located in a BMAP or other restoration plan area. Those projects are going to be submitted through the Protecting Florida Together portal that we're expecting to open in July. And then there will be more information on that site. But here is what eligible projects will include: septic to sewer, wastewater treatment facility improvements, stormwater projects that qualify as a cooperative agricultural regional water quality improvement element as part of a BMAP. OSTDS upgrades in certain areas to nutrient reducing systems, and then projects that are listed in a BMAP. Next, I'll talk about the non-point source management program. They have 2 grants. The first one is the federal 319 grant. That includes construction, education, and monitoring. It has a 40% match requirement, which planning and design may be eligible for match to meet that match requirement, but it can't be funded through the grant. There's some lead time. They say around 2 years at the most, because of the federal requirements. It has to go through the state approval and then through EPA. So there's some lead time for those projects. And then the eligibility: water quality improvement, restoration, groundwater protection, stormwater BMPs, agriculture, education projects, and then septic to sewer connections. That is just the connections. It doesn't include sewer extension part of the project. So that's one thing about that grant. The second grant as part of the non-point source management program is the State Water Quality Assistance Grant. This is a state grant for stormwater construction projects, shovel-ready projects. It has a quicker time from selection to awarding the grant. Unlike the 319, it does not require match or water quality monitoring. And it has a quicker application for grant award date. The process for how to submit a proposal for that: they're accepted throughout the year. You can contact the non-point source program grant manager. That's Connie Becker. I can put a link to our website here at the end and put that in the chat as well. And then they have review and evaluation periods for both of those grants wrapped up into one evaluation period in the fall and spring each year. And then they also can award projects out of cycle if they happen to have funding available. And then lastly, I'll touch real quick on the SRF program that's part of our division. They have low interest loans to local governments to plan, design, and build, upgrade water, wastewater, and stormwater facilities. Interest rates on their loans are below market rates and vary based on the economics of the community. And they have discounted assistance, very low interest rates, or grants, loan forgiveness for small communities. And then there's some federal requirements that'll be part of those agreements and can be used as match to the non-point grants. Okay, so that's all I have. I posted links to the Protecting Florida Together, where you can sign up to receive grant updates to get more information about the various grants in DEP that I did not talk about, including the Resilient Florida grant. And then I also have the DWRA website, where you can find more information on our funding opportunities, including the Springs, non-point grants, and SRF will be found there. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Michael. Appreciate it. Does anybody have any questions about the grant programs Michael just discussed in the room or online? All right. I'll be sharing that information that Michael sends to me and the other presentation, which I already have a copy of, will be sending out. You can expect that Monday next week when I'm back in the office. That being said, Michael, thanks for your time. Lauren as well. We do appreciate your presentation. We just have a few more quick agenda items, which is, are there any community requests from rural and ready communities that are online right now related to funding assistance requests? All right, you can contact me at another time if you have them. The next one is for our participating agencies. Do you have any updates or comments that you haven't yet been discussed in the meeting? If that's any of our ready agency partners, you can go ahead and speak now. All right, no updates, great. Our next meeting will be June 16th. And we are tentatively scheduled to hold that in Wakulla County. So we look forward to you joining us in person in Wakulla County. And that being said, get in touch with me. Thanks again to the City of Williston and all our presenters, state and federal partners. And we look forward to seeing you again soon.
Joshua?
Oh,
John?
Question. Yeah, Chris, go ahead.
John? Yeah, I put in the chat, this is Chris Doolin with the Small County Coalition. I put in the chat links to a number of legislative reports which the ready agencies and participants may be interested in. I don't know, I see it in my chat. I don't know if you can see it in yours, but there's a report of funding and legislation relating to counties. There's a report relating to school districts. There's the county by county allocations from the appropriation bill, which has not yet been presented to the governor. That includes all the projects and programs that are funded in the 2024 appropriation. And the last is the bill summaries, which are prepared by Tennyson, but included complete bill summary of legislation, all the links, the various legislation by cap, environment, agriculture, education. So those are available. Thank you very much, Josh.
Thanks, Chris. That was Chris Doolin with the Small Counties Coalition.
Are those links in the chat?
They are. I do see them. Thank you.
Oh, good.
All right. Anything else for the good of the group?
Hey Josh, Jeff Hendry. Just one more quick announcement. We did just finally get scheduled the 2023 Rural Summit. It's now the dates for that are gonna be November 29, November 30th, and December 1st. I just say that for folks, your calendars get booked pretty quickly. Easy way to remember that, it's the week after Thanksgiving. And we'll be getting a notice out probably in the next 2 weeks where people can at least start booking their hotel rooms, because at the end of the day, it is going to sell out. We just encourage everybody to attend. And lastly, I'd just like to thank everybody for their participation in the Rural Counties Day event that we had in April, which was by far the greatest and biggest that we've had. We had 27 of our 32 rural counties represented at the courtyard and legislative day, as well as over 350 at our reception. So these things are building, and we just encourage all of our rural partners and state agencies to stay engaged. And thank you for the time.
Yeah, thank you, Jeff. Yeah, of course, I encourage everybody to get their calendar open and available for the Rural Summit. That's a great opportunity for all rural partners and agencies. And Rural Counties Day was fantastic this year. I attended and I was able to talk to at least 20 of the 27 counties, I think, or more that were there. So really appreciate you guys putting that on. It was fantastic. Thanks very much. Anything else? Go to the group. City of Wilson, anything? All right. Thank you again. Have a great day. We're going to go ahead and stop the meeting and the recording now.
All right, well, for everybody that's